Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. We are here every week to bring you a digest of all that's been happening in the worlds of property and AI. I'm Mal McCallion. I'm here with co-host Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mal. Looking forward to getting stuck into this one.
Yeah, likewise. So without further ado, let's get into our property news. So this week in property, it's even more big news from the portals. Now, this is international stuff with a bit of a UK flavour. CoStar, who owns On the Market here in the UK, has gone and acquired another big portal somewhere else. Whereabouts, Matt?
Down in Australia, it's Domain Group, the second player there. In terms of, I've referenced this before, but they're a bit like our Zoopla in the Australian market, even to the extent where Zoopla bought various technologies. Domain have done that previously, and so they've gone and acquired those. Has the acquisition actually gone through? It's still subject to the due diligence.
Yeah, so it's as good as. So the shareholders have said yes. And so Nine Network, I think, is one of the TV channels
Mm.
that are majority owners. So they've said, okay, so I think it's going to go ahead. I can't see any particular reason why there would be any legal hurdles to overcome. So yeah, I assume it's going to go.
REA are just so big, or realestate.com.au are just so big over there. It's not like it'll be a competition and markets authority type situation. But one of the questions I suppose I want to put to you is, how does this impact everything going on over here for homes.com and CoStar?
Do you know what? So I was thinking if I was sitting there at Rightmove and indeed at REA Group and probably at Zillow as well. So those are the three markets that CoStar seem to be attacking all at the same time, which are big markets. And each of those market leaders, Zillow, Rightmove, and realestate.com.au, are big engines of cash. So CoStar is looking to take on all of those pretty much at the same time. And that to me, if I was Rightmove, I'd be delighted that they've gone and bought Domain, because that means that their attention will be split, I would imagine, in terms of how they organize investments and things like that, how they build out the attractiveness of it. There must be a plan, right? Obviously, that there is something in Andy Florence, who's the CEO of CoStar. He will have a vision of how all of these pieces lock in together. I think it's interesting that in the midst of all of this, they acquired Matterport. So I think the side of things is going to be key, and whether actually you can only see the Matterport kind of doll's house. So Matterport basically takes images of properties and builds them into a kind of 3D doll's house. So whether you can only see those or only see a version of those on these particular sites could be one angle to go down. But I certainly think that it's a bold move. I think it's an expensive move, 1.5 billion quid for in a market where AI is coming, and AI is going to change how we search. And we'll talk a little bit in the AI tech section about what's happened to search just in general terms for Google and so on. So yeah, I think I think it's an interesting move. I don't know if it's a good move. I think to your point and to your question, I do worry about what that means for on the market, because I think the market has not seen the attention. When I speak to agents every day, and they constantly say, I thought it was going to be absolutely supercharged by now. So it's been a year and a half since it was taken over by CoStar itself. And it hasn't acquired Zoopla, even though everybody thinks that's what it should be doing, rather than throwing each other. Then it should be
That half a billion is still kicking around as the valuation from a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so presumably Zoopla's waiting to see if they've shaken the tree, waiting to see if anybody falls out and makes an offer at that level. Otherwise, perhaps CoStar's offered 350 and they're just holding that line and saying that's what it's worth. And then in the end, they'll sell it. Interestingly as well, if you look at what on the market, or what CoStar did when they took over on the market, they got rid of Techlet straight away. So I would imagine that over in Domain, if you're working in their CRM engine or area, then you're probably going to be spun off very quickly, which I imagine would probably be the same for the Zoopla side of things as well. I know they've actually shipped out already, haven't they?
Yeah, it's a split out from usage to usage and confused as well, hasn't it?
I imagine that's just cleaning everything up. But yeah, so I think, look, if I'm Rightmove, I'm just quite happy again, right? Because I think that CoStar is going to be distracted right now. On the market hasn't really come on like the train I think everybody thought / hoped it would do. And Zoopla obviously has its own issues right now. So yeah, I don't think it changes anything for the better in terms of, does it weaken Rightmove? No. So I think there's probably needs to be something else happening.
Unless Murdoch comes back in the other direction with a higher bid for Rightmove.
Yeah, and again, look at that, 6.4 billion back in September last year. I thought at the time it was crazy to turn it down. I think even more as time goes on, and again, you look at the valuation of Zoopla, I think it's potentially that was the high watermark. I would imagine, who knows, perhaps they will come back in with another crazy offer. Obviously, stock markets right now are volatile, to say the least. So I wouldn't think that the Murdoch is going to definitely come in back for it anytime soon. But yeah, he's got a history of buying things at the top of the market and holding onto them and leveraging them. So perhaps there's content in there that he thinks he can leverage across his stable of newspapers and so on. But yes, I think at this point in time, the acquisition of Domain will make Rightmove, Zillow, realestate.com.au comfortable, because I think that they will just see a split focus. And it's hard enough to eat the elephant in one, let alone in three.
Well, no, that's something that we did talked about in the previous podcast anyway, wasn't it? The fact that Homes.com rebrand has taken longer to expect, and Jason Tebb's big presentation at Ian Masters last year was very much fire and brimstone, but at the moment, none of the changes, apart from some of the ones on the website and the mobile app, haven't actually materialized yet.
Yeah, and I think it's really funny. I sense this kind of will from everybody. There's just this kind of everyone's just going, "Come on, just come, yeah, just do it, take it
Mhm.
on, come on." And I think it's that, and that can turn very quickly into kind of disillusionment. And I think there is a risk there that actually by the time they have actually got all their ducks in a row, and again they're distracted now with Domain over there and all that sort of stuff, actually that goodwill will have dissipated and everybody will just be going, look, now you kind of missed your chance, and Rightmove have increased our prices by another 25% in that period of time. So actually we now can't even afford to do the stuff we want to do, even if you came at us with a really good deal. So I think that longer Rightmove is left without anybody challenging it properly, I think that, the more money is going to be scooped into their shareholders' pockets, and the more difficult it's going to be for any competitors to get some real traction, because agents just can't afford it.
Yeah.
All right, talking of Rightmove scooping money into their shareholders' pockets, last week they gave some guidance to the stock market that everything's a-okay as far as they're concerned. So I think the quote was solid financial, operational, and strategic momentum. And basically that means that revenue growth is going to be between 8 and 10% this year compared with a year earlier. Remember, fact fans, that inflation is around 2.5%, I think. So this is, yeah, pretty punchy, as it always is. So yeah, and that money is not going to be coming from thin air. It is going to be coming from the commissions that estate agents earn going and doing their jobs and taking all the content and then shipping up to Rightmove. Yeah, again, it's just another. Yeah, it just feels like another tax, right? If you're an agent and you've got all this extra regulatory stuff to do from the government, and then you're having to pay all this extra stuff to move forward, pretty much the same stuff. It hasn't changed in a long old time, has it?
It's talking about organic growth as well there in terms of new membership numbers. I don't know if that's people opening new offices and having to have an office alongside that. There was some figures when we did the management buyout at Repeat where there was 19,500 agencies in the UK, and doing some figures just last year it was up to 22,500. So whether that's the self-employed brokers coming on and needing a Rightmove membership number to do that, but certainly that organic growth and those new people coming in is an interesting one.
Yeah, and look, I'm always a little bit suspicious about how these numbers come to pass. I remember speaking to some agents last year, and they were suddenly being charged separately for their Fine and Country branches within, even though they're in the same location.
Yeah.
We were suddenly saying, actually, no, those are separate entities, and therefore we will charge you for them. And they've done the same with lettings a few years before. I don't doubt that they'll be coming for auctions
Yeah.
next. Actually, you've got an auction section, so that's going to cost you extra as well. And I just think it's just that kind of encroachment onto all areas of business, seeing them as different revenue units, different business units.
You've
And
just given them an idea, Mal. So can we edit
sorry,
that bit out?
sorry, everybody out there. I'm pretty sure they've got their eyeballs on that as a growth area already. But yeah, I just think when they're talking about what these branches, and I'm using air quotes for those just listening, are, I yeah, I don't know that it's grown that much, or it doesn't feel like it's grown that much. Yes, I think
Mhm.
there are more self-employed agents out there, absolutely. But from what I hear, they're not necessarily paying the same whack as the traditional ones anyway, traditional agencies anyway. Yes, lots of smoke and mirrors. I think that just the headline is it's 10% more, baby. That's pretty much where Rightmove is likes to be, and where their shareholders like to be, and pretty much where their customers, for they are paying customers, don't want to be. So Yes, another indicator of how much, yes, that particular dominant property portal is scared at the moment. And the answer
Mhm.
is not at all. All right, so next up, we are going to move on to the exciting thing. You remember, Matt?
Equally exciting, major changes in the material information guidance.
Yeah, no, don't turn off yet. Don't turn off yet. Really
Well,
important to start.
the good news is there's a don't panic moment straight afterwards, and I nearly went for don't panic, Mr. Mannering, but I don't know if anyone actually remembers that side
Nobody's
of
as
things.
old as us. No.
No, exactly. But there's just it came as a big announcement. There's some of this material information guidance that's been issued previously by. It's quite a long acronym, isn't it? But it's basically the guidance of properties you have to be able to provide up front to a buyer or a consumer as they deem it. And a lot of news, a lot of headlines about this guidance being removed. But actually, David Smith this morning, who I know you're at the ICG event with him on Thursday, and his talks very about everything to do with property and the law, has come out and saying he doesn't see this as a bad thing, and he was basically expecting the withdrawal of the material information guidance because he saw the guidance was poor. It's a nice follow up from David, and anything that's removing confusion is only a good thing.
I think that's right. But yeah, I think my concern, again, talking to agents, because I remember as you were, when this first came out, everybody was running around going, oh my God, this is so onerous. There's
Mm,
so much extra information I have to gather before I can even get it on. And again, talking about age, I remember the old HIPS home information packs from 2008, nine, whatever it
yeah,
was.
that's not that long ago.
It's quite long ago.
Yeah, 17
Uh,
years.
but yeah, and everyone going, oh, it's just so got to get all this information together. Where are we going to find it? And then we can't put the property on the market, blah, blah, blah. And then for this to just then evaporate within 2 years,
Mm,
I think so many people have done so much work on it. I'm minded to agree with David that nothing is better than something that's wrong. But if that nothing is, there's now almost no guidance, but the law is still there. So actually, you've still got this problem, which is what happens if I actually accidentally break the law? And the national trading standards have still said, oh, you've still got to follow the law. Obviously, they've got to say that. So I think it's really difficult for agents. I think it's a I can understand why they've done it because they cover their own backsides because the guidance is wrong and is in conflict with bits of the law. But to just remove it, I think is really difficult and has caused and will cause a lot of angst, particularly amongst those who have been doing it right. And I know a lot of agents who, you know, complete right from the word go, we are going to be the ones that adhere to this to the letter. And then there are other agents out there who perhaps haven't done it
yeah,
to the letter. And that's always a bit of an imbalance and it's always a bit kind of unfair. I think the other thing that's really interesting about this is how everyone's kind of pussyfooting around it a little bit. Because
mm,
even the kind of Ricks has put a statement out, Property Mark's put a statement out, and nobody has said, what the hell are you doing? They've all gone,
yeah.
it's a little bit disappointing that blah, blah. It's because it's trading standards, nobody wants to piss them off. Everyone's just
Because then you get a TSA person popping up at your office, don't you?
exactly right. It's so funny.
Um,
It's almost like protection racket. No disrespect to obviously, don't please come around and turn up my house.
yes.
But it's quite funny just how everyone's pulling their punches. Instead of just saying this is an absolute shit show, they're actually saying they could have done it a little bit better.
And I wonder if we'll get some enforcement officers turning up at various branches news articles next week as they try to put in place that actual does need to be adhered to still and stop ripping down your window cards and changing your displays quickly because you think you can get away with it. And that's always the challenge, isn't it? It's the enforcement of it when there's not enough boots on the ground.
Exactly. And there will be differential enforcements. Again, you'll be the same. When you speak to the larger agents, they're much more afraid because they're a bigger target. So they're all, you know, trying to adhere to all these things and it's costing all that sort of stuff. If you're a one office firm, and again, I'm not suggesting for a second that one office firms all do this, but little town in the middle of nowhere, then the chances of you being spotted by the BDI of trading standards is probably less of a risk. And that makes it unfair, right? If you're a big regional and you're competing against somebody who just isn't doing it, then that's a cost to you that perhaps the consumer doesn't even really notice or doesn't know about. So yes, lots to unpack there. I'm sure there will be some replacement guidance coming quickly. But yeah, I think for me, this story is much more about just the mismatch of here's the law, here's our guidance, and we decided to introduce new law and it's just messed everything up. So that lack of coordination, I think, is just symptomatic of the fact that this industry is not being treated with the respect that it deserves. And yes, it's a problem for all of us.
Perfect. Perfect into the segment.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, let's move away from the thrills of material information and duck into some AI and tech news. All right, there is a lot about search in AI and tech this week. Particularly, Matt, you were looking at the Apple's browser Safari and how that is changing how it discovers things, right?
That's it. We talked about Google. When you go to Google results now, you get your search, your AI overview from Gemini coming up. So this is Apple's approach to that within Safari, where they're putting in place perplexity, perplexing to say that this time in the morning, and other AI search as well. So this is the idea that Apple can swap out whichever AI wants to use at a given point in time. I was a little disappointed actually with this one because we spoke a few weeks about how with Siri being dropped and taking a couple of years to rebuild, although that time frame shortened again recently, that I'd hacked my phone so that it was doing ChatGPT voice. And I thought maybe in that section I'd said surely they could plug in something else in the meantime while they'd get Siri back. And I thought it might well be that. But it's very interesting to see that they're opening up to not just be perplexity. It's, yes, we're going to use you for now, but be aware that we might easily swap you out for something else, which is sensible. But so we'll start seeing for those people who do use Safari, the AI overviews appearing that Chrome users have been tracked to for quite a while now.
Yeah, exactly. And then what that will do to the organic search results and
Yeah.
throughs from that. Again, I think that from Google now, there is a 34% drop is what some of the larger companies that report on the stock market are saying, is that their organic traffic is down 34% because these AI overviews on Google basically answer the question without people having to go to the website to find out what the question is. So this is going to be similar impacts for Apple users. And interesting as well, this week, you've got the news that actually for the first time, Google searches in Apple Safari for the first time in 22 years have dropped.
And that's from the thrillingly named website Search Engine Land, which I've got a joke that it sounds like a theme park you might take your kids to if you were me or you. But threatened my niece and nephew with tricked to Search Engine Land at some point. But it's a bit
Fun you have there.
behind the glib website title. It is for the first time in 22 years. It's quite astounding, isn't it?
It is, and this is what I mean. There's this seismic change happening, almost in plain sight, but really the ramifications of it are not being fully understood. I think this is huge. I think that if for the first time in 25, 30 years, the way that we discover things is fundamentally changing, then I think that maps across everything. And I think that will map across in our world, in property search. People aren't going to be diligently typing things in and filtering things and all that sort of stuff. They're just going to be chatting to their phone. And this is one of the problems that Google has, is people are now just chatting with their phone. It is 3 times on average faster to say something than it is to type something. Human beings by their very nature are either efficient or lazy, depending on your way of looking at it. So we're all just going to just ask questions. Just go ChatGPT, find me this property. ChatGPT, go and order me a takeout, instead of actually doing it ourselves. And that, I think, is going to radically change how our lives are in the next couple of years, hugely. So yeah, lots going on, as I say, in searches. In other sort of AI news around sort of structural stuff, we've got some big changes at the top of OpenAI.
Yeah, that's it. So there's the Instacart boss has come in as the CEO of applications. And for me, this is a continuation of a news story from a couple of weeks back where Shopify is getting a lot closer to OpenAI. So that you'd be able to actually say, I need some new glasses. I've got a bit of a scratch on my right lens. I'm looking at you because I'm not wearing my glasses. And it can return the search revenues, do all the searches, and actually allow you to order directly from within ChatGPT. And that sort of a segue through. And with this appointment, the Instacart boss, Vijay Simo, I hope I've said that right, as the CEO of applications, really continues in my mind that trajectory of where they're taking it.
Yeah, and I think it is going to be interesting how the monetization of these AI search results is going to continue. So Perplexity is quite open about the fact that it has sponsorships down the side, and its answers are somewhat influenced by who gives it money. Now, Google obviously squared that circle 20 years ago by having these sponsored links around the side, so they're very clear, and then the organic search results in the main body. And then over time, the number of sponsored links increased and then started to look a lot like the organic ones, and people clicked on them, right? So it's what is going to be the journey of that with OpenAI. Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, is on record as saying he doesn't like adverts. I suspect that when he's trying to pay back all the billions that he's borrowed and his investors want some of their money back, that he may change that view slightly. But I do think that consumers are going to want to know. They're going to want to know whether they are being influenced or persuaded to use something, because there's a financial incentive in there for that to happen. So yeah, I think that as as the commerce side and the discovery side come together, I would think that there is going to be absolutely some very clear sponsored links and shopping links and things like that. And you can just say, yes, I'd like you to go and buy that. And I think that's going to be, again, another feature of how this technology develops and how we become ever more, again, not lazy, efficient in
Yeah.
how we do things and how we order things and the ease with which we buy stuff.
And I think just that evolution of search is squared off with Anthropic rolling out the API for AI-powered web search as well. It's an article in there. So there's been a constant theme, hasn't there, right the way through how you talked about property portals at the start and how search is evolving. And now with these various news stories just this week about how much more we're using and web search. And there was a comment I heard from a guy about six weeks ago about vibe coding. And for anybody who doesn't know, vibe coding is where somebody with no technical skills can actually say into AI, I want to build what's a recent example I did? I want to build a property screen that allows me to work out the land department charges for a given property on the REPIT database. And so vibe coded that, hooked it up to the APIs, all with very basic skills. They put the idea out there that vibe coding was something that would sort of rocket in terms of the usage of that term. And he checked back 3 weeks later and it was already at that rate where you'd expect it to have been around for a year or two. And I think the same going to be true for us over the coming weeks and months with search. Just everyone scrambling to actually make sure that they've got AI embedded so that they're not being left behind like we've seen from Apple this week.
Yeah, and interesting. This is massive aside. I've been thinking about the phrase vibe searching. All right. So
Yeah.
again, bear with me here. If you are looking for your dream home and actually you say, want something with a sea view, 3 bedrooms on the south coast, and then it comes back with a variety of different things, then you filter it a little bit. You kind of say, actually, I want a bigger garden and blah. And what you're doing is just like with the vibe coding, you're essentially getting AI to do all the legwork and bring it back. And then you have a look at it and you go, yeah, that one, no, that one. And then it goes or comes back. And I suspect that's how we're going to start to do this discovery piece. And it's going to be a lot more personal and the results are going to be very unique to me, but it's going to be much closer to the things that I want rather than necessarily the things that are out there. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting shift across the whole thing. And this, and as you say, that the phrase "vibe anything" is going to be, it's going to come to be quite annoying. So sorry about that.
It's basically a whole of market personal search without you having to go to all the agents and the portals.
Yeah, exactly that. So yeah, I think that is going to be the thing. And again, I'm sure we'll come back to this. I think that's going to be the thing that is going to, yeah, really challenge the likes of Rightmove and indeed Zillow and indeed realestate.com.au, but also the likes of Domain and others too. So going to be interesting to see how that all pans out. Alrighty, that was our tech and AI news of the week. Let's talk about our tool of the week. So this week, HeyGen, which is an AI avatar service, dropped HeyGen 4, which is pretty amazing. If anybody's following me on LinkedIn, then I dropped a video on Friday. As Matt said, I've been at the ICG, the Innovation Collaboration Group, headed up by Ian White, on Thursday up in Manchester, the Etihad Stadium. Really good day, really good conference. And I just took a picture of myself outside the Etihad Stadium. And then the next day, I could use that photo to create a really effective video of me talking about actually the previous night's football results, just to prove that it wasn't just me talking, because it looked pretty compelling, right? I mean,
To put this in how much of an evolution it is, I've actually done one, as I know you have before, with HeyGen 3, sat at this very seat and recorded 3 minutes of video. And the video has then struggled with my Grimsby accent, but generating an AI where my dad commented that I should stop looking away from the camera. Dad, that's the AI doing that. It's not me. But that's the fact that it's gone from taking 3 minutes of footage to doing it just from a single picture is quite astonishing.
and the head movements are good, and it wrinkles foreheads, looks away, all that sort of stuff. It's a really smart piece of kit. So yeah, do go and have a little look at that. HeyGen, HeyGen, HeyGen 4 is really just very cool, very fun. And yes, as the technology continues to improve, obviously there are use cases within the industry for things like this to help you to expand your reach and to be in a million places at once. Yeah, want to certainly keep an eye on as we go through. Alrighty, we did just want to just drop in on our occasional series, the Weird AI of the Week. Now, this was my selection because I just found it so astonishing. There is a story from over in the States where a road rage victim speaks via AI with at his killer's sentencing. All right. So this guy sadly was killed, and the guy who died has been reanimated as an AI, and his voice and his avatar then spoke at the sentencing directly to his killer, which is, you said there's a Black Mirror
Yeah,
article.
yeah, it's a Black Mirror episode where the Charlie, whatever his name is, who come up with a concept that when you pass away, your loved one passes away via AI, you can recreate via first initially with social media interactions, and then you actually get a bot delivered to the house, which is the person with all their characteristics, personality, and voice. So it's once again with Black Mirror, just the fact that these dystopian episodes that you watch rather chillingly quite recently has been created there. But at the same time, it sounds like it's been a good use case within this, even though it is quite extraordinary.
It's quite weird, isn't it? Yeah, and there's that like art imitating life, imitating art, or whatever the way around it is. But yeah, it's I always look at these things and think, okay, so that's happening now. What, as you said, what is going to be the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? If it is the case that AI versions of those that were killed come back and speak at the sentencing, in this particular case, he was quite forgiving, or his avatar said, in another life we could have been friends, blah, blah. But what happens if the family actually want that person to demand the death sentence? How does that influence sentencing policy and so on? And how do you know that was the case? And so I think there's a lot of ethical stuff around there. There's a lot of interesting things. I don't think this will be the last time that this happens. And as you say, Matt, it could very well be that in some time we will get robots that are the physical manifestation of our or dead loved ones, which I think would probably be something that at this point in 2025, most, if not everybody, would probably draw the line at so far. All right, that was weird, right? Weird AI of the week, really weird. All right, that is it for this week. Thank you so much for listening to us at the Property AI Report. We'll be back next week with plenty more from the paired worlds of property and AI. Thanks, Matt. Really good. Really enjoyed that.
Thanks for your time, Mel. Have a great week, everyone.
Enjoy yourselves, guys. Take care. We will catch you in a few days.